the establishment of an empire. Sargon sent Akkadian governors to govern the Sumerian cities, demolishing the defensive walls surrounding the cities. He did not interfere with the Sumerian religion, but made Akkadian the official language of all of Mesopotamia. By breaking down physical and linguistic barriers, he united his subjects, fostering trade both within and beyond Mesopotamia. Trade with India brought products such as wool and olive oil in exchange for pearls, ivory, and other precious goods reaching Mesopotamia. Valuable metals like copper and silver served as a currency among traders instead of minting coins. Metals were weighed on scales to determine their value. Sargon used the taxes collected from merchants to pay his soldiers, supporting royal artists and scribes who glorified his achievements in sculptures and inscriptions. King Sargon ruled for over half a century and established a dynasty that would endure through the reign of his grandson Naram-Sin. Sargon's legacy, inspired by subsequent emperors, proved to be more enduring than his own reign, as demonstrated by the accomplishments of later rulers. Early life and rise to power. Sargon, as mentioned, was not the name given to him at birth, but a throne name he chose for himself, meaning legitimate king. It is a Semitic name, not Sumerian, leading to the general assumption that he was of Semitic origin. However, there is no definitive way to ascertain the accuracy of this claim. Little is known about Sargon's birth or youth. In fact, despite being one of the most famous figures of the ancient world, his inscriptions and autobiography remained unknown to the modern world until the 19th century, when they were discovered in the library of Ashurbanipal in Nineveh. The Akkadian Sargon legend is partially as follows. My mother was a changeling, my father I knew not. My uncle's brothers loved the hills. My city is Azupiranu, which is situated on the Euphrates. My changeling mother conceived me. In secret she bore me. She set me in a basket of rushes. With bitumen she sealed my lid. She cast me into the river, which rose not over me. The river bore me up and carried me to Aki, the drawer of water, while Aki, the drawer of water, was fetching water. He took me out in a vessel of rushes. He reared me. He made me his gardener. Despite being one of the most famous figures of the ancient world, Sargon was not known to the modern world until around 1870 AD. Aki adopted the child and raised him as his own son. Sargon gained enough prestige to become the Kabera in the palace. Scholar Susan Weisbauer notes, ancient Kaberas were not mere servants. Sumerian inscriptions do not define the Kabera's duties, but soon in Assyria, the Kabera was second only to the king 97. Sargon, with the title of Kabera, had the king's trust. However, his loyalty was tested when a neighboring king, Lugal-Zogasi of Umma, launched a military conquest in the region. Ancient Mesopotamia, like ancient Greece, was dotted with many small city-states, each vying for fertile land and water. Lugal-Zogasi of Umma circa to 358 to 334 BCE led his army through the Sumerian region, conquering city-states one by one and uniting them under his authority, much like the previous Logos king Nernatum the Dumb. He seemed to have left Kish undisturbed previously, but decided to move there after conquering Uruk. Bauer writes of a line from the literary work of Sargon and Urzaboba, learning that the conqueror's army was approaching his city, was so terrified 97. Urzaboba had become suspicious of Sargon, and despite no evidence that the Kabera posed any threat, he decided to send him to Lugal-Zogasi, seemingly with a peace offering. It is unknown whether Urzaboba included any terms or conditions in the message, but at least according to Sargon and Urzaboba, what is known is that after receiving the message from Lugal-Zogasi, Baba wanted Sargon killed. For whatever reason, Lugal-Zogasi refused to comply and instead invited Sargon to join him. Together, they marched to Kish and easily took the city. Baba fled and went into hiding. What exactly happened afterward is uncertain, due to the many legends that developed around Sargon's life, which persisted for centuries. At this point, it is likely that he may have had a relationship with Lugal-Zogasi's wife, or been sent on a mission that turned the region into his first engagement in conquest. Whatever the case, they quickly turned from allies to enemies. Sargon marched to Uruk and conquered it. Lugal-Zogasi marched from Kish to face Sargon in battle and was defeated. Sargon then chained him, tied a rope around his neck, and forced him to pass through the gates of Nippur, a city sacred to the god Enlil. Humiliated, choosing the goddess Ishtar Inanna as his divine protector, Sargon declared himself the king of Kish, swiftly bringing the Sumerian region under his control. Military campaigns and empire building. When Sargon overthrew Lugal-Zogasi and seized power, he already had a united kingdom that he could use to establish the first empire over all of Mesopotamia through military campaigns. His own legend, which formed his humble beginnings, may have assisted him in this. As in later eras and other cultures, as well as up to the present day, class distinctions in Sumerian cities led to growing resentment among the lower class towards the elite. The wealthiest citizens could acquire as much land as they could hold, while the lower classes routinely felt deprived of th. The story of Sargon's humble beginnings as a gardener might have appealed to many working-class Sumerians, who could have seen him as a savior and reformer. However, immediately after coming to power, the city-states and their ruling elites did not readily accept Sargon with grace and submission. They rebelled against their new ruler, forcing him to prove his legitimacy as a king through military strength. After conquering Sumer, he either built a new city or revitalized the ancient city of Akkad, also known as Agade, on the banks of the Euphrates River. This marked a complete break from the precedent, where a king of an existing city would conquer another for the glory of the main city and the resources that would now be available. In contrast, Sargon did not conquer a city for another. He conquered for himself and established his own city to reap the benefits of the conquest. After gaining control of the region, unsatisfied with his achievements so far, he set out on further campaigns. Bowers' writing states, Sargon, who controlled the Mesopotamian plain, set out to establish an empire reaching beyond Mesopotamia. He led his soldiers from one campaign to another. King Sargon of Kish, 1 tablet writes, 1 victories in 24 battles. He crossed the Tigris and seized the lands of the Elamites. Advancing through warfare to the north, he went to the captured city of Mari, and then further advanced into the lands of another Semitic tribe, even more wild and nomadic than his own Akkadians, the Amorites, spanning the lands west of the Caspian Sea. By organizing a campaign to the upper reaches of the Tigris, he reached the small city of Asher and conquered it. After this, he moved further north and declared his dominance over the equally small city of Nineveh. Sargon may even have invaded Asia Minor. The Akkadian Empire establishing an empire is one thing, but maintaining it in working order is quite another. Nevertheless, Sargon proved to be as skilled in governance as he was in military conquests. Throughout his empire, Sargon strategically placed his most capable and trusted men and women in powerful positions in various cities to ensure its sustained existence. Those referred to as Akkadian citizens in later Babylonian texts were governors, priests, and administrators of more than 65 different cities. In one of his inscriptions, it is written, From the Upper Sea to the Lower Sea, the sons of Akkad held sway over the lordship of their cities. Bauer notes, in this kingdom, Sumerians quickly found themselves living as foreigners in their own cities. When Sargon took a city, it became an Akkadian fortress, with Akkadian officials and garrisons. 99. Sargon's placement of his reliable officials, along with Akkadian forces, allowed for closer control of various regions. Sargon wisely appointed his daughter Enheduanna as the high priestess of Ur, managing to manipulate religious, political, and cultural matters from a distance through her. Enheduanna is recognized today as the world's first known author by name, and based on what is known about her life, she appears to have been not only a highly talented writer, but also a skilled and powerful administrator. This arrangement worked so well that Sargon's grandson, Naram-Sin, appointed his daughter to the same position. The stability provided by this empire led to the construction of roads, improvements in irrigation, expanded influence in trade, and advancements in art and science. The Akkadian Empire created the first postal system, where clay tablets written in cuneiform Akkadian script were wrapped in outer clay envelopes, marked with the recipient's name, an address and the sender's seal. These letters could not be opened except by the intended recipient, as breaking the clay envelope was the only way, ensuring privacy in correspondence. Sargon also standardized weights and measures for trade, and daily commerce, initiated a fair taxation system for all social classes, and participated in numerous construction projects, including the restoration of Babylon, although this claim has been disputed repeatedly. According to an inscription, he established, trained, and equipped a full-time army of 5,400 soldiers in the city of Akkad, where, according to the text, they ate bread with the king daily. This stands in contrast to later armies in history filled with reluctant soldiers. Despite the improvements in the lives of Mesopotamian citizens, the people continued to rebel against Akkadian rule throughout his life. Sargon consistently suppressed rebellions, as city-states declared their autonomy and revolted against the empire. However, as centuries passed, the difficulties experienced under Sargon's rule were forgotten, and only his heroic achievements and the golden age of the Akkadians were remembered. For the next 3,000 years, Sumerians, Babylonians, Assyrians, and others would tell stories about Akkadian Sargon and his glorious victories, referencing his so-called autobiography. When I reached the age of 55, all the lands rose against me and besieged me in a gate, but the fangs and claws of the old lion were still there. I went to battle and defeated them. I laid them low and annihilated their vast armies. Now, any king who claims to be my all, let him go. According to the Sumerian king list, Sargon ruled for 56 years and died of natural causes in old age. While he may have seemed larger than life to his people during his reign, in death, he assumed an almost divine status, Krivacek writes. So far, civilization has been based on the belief that humanity was created by the gods. For their own purposes, the city-states, which we imagine began as sacred centers of pilgrimage, were repositories of civilization on divine foundations. Each city was the creation and home of a specific god. It was as if real life was the life lived by the gods in the divine realm, whereas here, on Earth, what happened was largely an irrelevant sideshow. The age of Sargon and Naram-Sin changed all that, shifted the focus onto the human world, and brought a new understanding of the meaning of the universe. The main theme of the Mesopotamian story was now humans rather than gods. Humanity was now in control. Men and women became the masters of their destinies. Of course, people were still religious, still offering sacrifices in temples. pouring libations of wine, performing rituals, and invoking the names of the gods on every occasion. However, the religiosity of the age had a quite different flavor, legend and legacy. The legends surrounding Sargon and his dynasty became one of the most readily recognized works of Mesopotamian art in the final days of the Assyrian Empire. For the Assyrians, around 1870 BC, the story of the baby placed in a basket in the river, discovered and raised to become a great leader by nobles, was effectively used by a Hebrew scribe, who borrowed it to write the book of Exodus in the Bible, narrating the story of the hero Moses. Sargon's story is that of a hero rising from uncertain beginnings to save his people. Whether he was seen as such a savior by those living under his rule, given the numerous rebellions he had to suppress, is doubtful. However, for later generations, such as those living under the Guti occupation, described by the scholar Samuel as a demoralizing, destructive, and merciless, barbarous horde, he and his dynasty represented a bygone era of glorious hero kings. The stories of Sargon played a role in inciting the Sumerians to rebellion around 2047 BC, under the Sumerian kings Utu-Hegel and Ur-Nammu, who challenged the Guti, and during the reign of Ashulgi, Sargon and his dynasty were driven out of Sumer, allowing for the development of the so-called Sumerian Renaissance of the Ur-3 period, 2047 to 1750 BC, the greatest two Sumerian kings of the Ur-3 period, Ur-Nammu 2047 to 2030 BC and Ashulgi 2029-1980 BC, shaped their public images after Sargon and Naram-Sin. After Sargon's death, the empire passed to his son Rimush, who had to endure and suppress rebellions challenging his legitimacy. Rimush ruled for 9 years, and upon his death, the kingship passed to Sargon's other son, Manish-tu-Su, who would reign for the next 15 years, while both of his sons ruled effectively. The height of the Akkadian Empire was achieved under Sargon's grandson Naram-Sin. During his reign, the empire grew and expanded beyond the limits reached even by Sargon. After his death, his son Shar-Koli-Shari became the ruler, and during his rule, as city-states fragmented to establish their independent kingdoms, the empire began to disintegrate. Shar-Koli-Shari waged almost constant wars against the Elamites, Amorites, and invading Gutians while attempting to keep the empire intact. However, it became unsustainable. The Gutian invasion is most commonly associated with the collapse of the Akkadian Empire and the subsequent Dark Age of Mesopotamia, portraying the Gutians as destroyers of civilization in the eyes of later writers. However, recent research suggests that climate change, leading to a famine and possibly disrupting trade, likely weakened the empire to the point where the kinds of invasions and rebellions easily suppressed in the past were no longer possible, contributing to its downfall. The famine is mentioned in a later work of Mesopotamian literature, The Curse of Agade, approximately 2047 to 1750 BC, describing the destruction of Akkad by the will of the gods, famine, invasion, the wrath of the gods, or a combination of these factors. Akkad fell, great kings departed, and the empire passed into legends that would be told, retold, written, and copied for centuries. All that remained of the once great Akkadian Empire of the great Sargon